Welcome back to Garage Time. Today we're going to switch gears to Mac. Actually, literally switching gears. This is a transmission update on the 915. Check it out.
Garage Time.
It's been a month or two since I've worked on this transaxle. I've been busy working on the 356, but I need to get reacquainted with it. Here's what I know. This transmission's the one I took out of Mac, and I put about 3,000 miles on this one, but it was popping out of third gear, and so I removed it to do some repairs, and it's got some big problems. Number one, it had a problem with the input shaft. This is the one here in the middle is the one that I took out of Mac. And the problem with this one is it has these chips here in the splines that retain second gear. Every one of them is chipped. And this could have been really bad. If the gear was to slip all the way off here, it would have completely locked up the transmission. I also have this transmission, which I purchased just like this. It was bought disassembled for about $1,000, I think, shipped. It was cheap. So the shaft right here, the top one, is from that transmission. It's also an early transmission. It is identical to this one, and I have the matching first gear. So I'm going to go ahead and put the transmission back together with this shaft. But I also wanted to show you guys this one. This is the later updated shaft from like an 82 or something. 82, 84. That's what the shafts look like in the 915. They have a much stronger retainer here. Actually, there's a big sleeve that goes here. Second gear is still in the same place, but they take the load and they push it back onto this shoulder, which is a continuous piece. Then there's a spacer ring. So this is much better in the long term, and it's got the same gear ratios and so forth. Everything else on this end is identical. I bought this, I think it was like $900, which is kind of expensive for me, but it did come with first gear. Its numbers matching first gear and so forth. Also, this year had updated synchros, and they're directional. So instead of the dog teeth being pointy in the middle, they're pointy on the end. So because you always downshift into first, this one will shift a little bit better. So that's the story with the input shafts. I think this transmission might have had a big engine behind it because it also has worn out bearing bores. Let me show you. So when I took this guy apart, this bearing race fell out. With just finger pressure, this race was loose. Now, this being magnesium, or even aluminum for that matter, when it gets warm, those bearing clearances are going to get worse because the aluminum or magnesium will expand faster than the steel race, and that just gets loose in there, and it causes all kinds of problems and wear, and it can just eat up the bearings, eat up the transmission. So this housing, this differential housing, has to be sent out for remanufacture. So what they do is they bore this out, they put a steel sleeve in there. It's going to solve that problem forever. It's a really good upgrade, but it's an expensive upgrade. My plan is to, as I said, send out this housing to be remanufactured. That's going to be a big investment, but it really does improve the strength of those magnesium cases, and it'll handle a lot of power if that modification's done. And the bearing retainer, they make a billet bearing retainer out of steel. You can improve the side cover plate. I'll do all the latest synchros and all the stronger input shafts like I showed you. That's what I have planned for this one. The other transmission that's here in this little blue box, I'm going to build that one as a stock transmission. So today, I just want to verify that this stock transmission in the box is, the bores are in good enough condition to hold the bearings tight and not have the same problem this one had. Just scrubbing this up, getting it as clean as possible. It's already pretty clean. Someone blasted this one, vapor blast or something, so it's not my favorite method, but I just want to clean it because I'm going to put it in the barbecue to heat it up and evaluate the fit of the bearings, so we'll see. I didn't find any specifications for bore size. It's really more of a can't be loose when hot kind of method. I've looked everywhere for bore sizes. They're not there. Looks like this trans may have been painted at one time, which is probably why they blasted it, because that's a little weird. There's little fragments of red paint on it. These magnesium cases are really light, and that's what's attractive to me. You guys know Mack is a lightweight car. The issue is, and what I've been told, I've talked to several transmission experts, if you're gonna run a race car and you're gonna run like solid mounts, you can't run the magnesium transaxle. It'll eventually crack. If it's a street car and you're running the stock, rubber mounts and you're not driving like a maniac, then the transmissions can handle 300 horsepower easy. So that's my plan. I want to go for lightweight but strong, and magnesium is perfect for that. Come to find out, this has some silver paint on it, I guess to look like aluminum, but it's not. So the natural color of magnesium is that dark gray. So I'm just rubbing on some, this is actually a mixture of brake fluid and acetone, and it's basically, I'm just soaking it in the oil of the brake fluid, and that's just taking off all the weird red and silver paint on this thing so we can really evaluate it. Okay, this thing is hot. 240. So 230, 240, something in that range. This is a brass punch. But it's a I would call this a light press fit because it moves, but it's not just dropping out. Yeah. You can't spin the bearing at all. I mean, you can kind of get it to go in. I think we're in good shape here. Much tighter than the other housing. I don't think this transmission will ever get that hot. So let's get the small bearing out. Nope, you can't spin that. Just want to show you the condition of the bores. They're nice and smooth, no signs of scoring or rotation or any kind of roughness in there at all. This one does appear to be a little shinier than this one, but no indication of a spun bearing or anything like that. So the bores look pretty good on this case. Luckily, I think this one is going to be rebuildable. The difficulty now is taking the differential out of that one and setting it up in a whole new housing. That's going to be a lot of work because if you replace the housing, the differential settings are totally different. So I have the tools to do that. It's a lot more work, but I think in the end, it'll be worth it. This transaxle has the 731 ring and pinion, and that's the one I'm going to put in here as kind of my stock transmission. The hot rod transmission, because I'm planning on running close to 300 horsepower, I should use the 831. That's a stronger differential, and it's just better gearing for a high power car. The other good sign is these bearings look like the original German bearings, FAG, stamped Germany on them. So it's unlikely that this has ever been apart before. I mean, I can't guarantee that, but the fact that these are German bearings is probably a good sign. I'm going to take the differential out of this housing so I can, one, put it into the new housing, and two, send this off to be rebuilt. But before I just blow it all apart, this was running really nice and quiet. The differential had no issues in Mack. So I have this inch-pound torque wrench, and one of the ways to measure the bearing preload on the differential is to measure the friction torque. So this is not new. I mean, it's been running, and the friction torque seems pretty light. So what I'm going to try to do before I just take it apart is measure that torque using this. Now this is a clicker style wrench. The factory shows more of an analog gauge, but I'm just going to try to get a measure for it. Also the manual, these are the, I think, FAG bearings, 350 Newton centimeters, range of 350 to 650. 350 Newton centimeters is 31.2 inch-pounds if I did my math correct. The max on this wrench is 30. Right now I have it only set to 6, and it's turning the whole differential. Like I said, this is already been run. So I'm going to back it down to, yeah, there's 0. I'm going to do, I don't even know if this is valid. This is 4 inch-pounds right here. And it spins the whole thing. So the preload, I'm not saying the preload on this is wrong, but it is light. And it's just, it very well could be that it's been run in. Everything looks good on those. So now this is the differential in there, and I can move it with my fingers, and you know, obviously there's no noticeable play on the differential there. Even if I grab the gear here, it feels great, it feels nice and tight. So we'll go ahead and take the cover off. Everything should slip right out. Bearing surfaces here look pretty good, as expected, for a transaxle that was really running and driving quite well. So there's that bearing. A little bit of sludge here in the bottom. So we'll get all that cleaned out, and like I said, this will get rebuilt with probably a limited slip differential as well. The crown wheel looks nice and shiny, as expected. No pitting or any kind of wear on this one. The pinion is also in good shape, so this can be reused as well. These gears look good inside too, these spider gears. This is an open differential system. Because the machinist needs to come in here with the cutters, I'm going to remove all these studs just to save a little bit of cost and save him some time. And all I'm doing, I don't have the special stud remover tool. All I'm doing is using the double nut method. So I just lock the 2 nuts together and then they come right off. The problem with this method is you often will end up, with a nut stuck on the stud that you can't undo it. And rather than put vice grips on the stud, what I do is I just cut a slot in this nut right here. And then when this goes on, I could just clamp this down in my vise with the slot on the side, and then that should grab the stud. And then the nut should come off. Because it's got a slot in it, you can take it off with your fingers. So I got to do that to several of these because that happened to almost every one of them. I finally got all the studs out, and not gonna lie, that was a pretty big task. Just time consuming, but this surface is nice and smooth. All the gaskets are removed. The bores, like I said, don't look bad. This one has some fretting on it. You can kind of feel it with your finger. This one, which is the one that was the loosest, it feels fine, but I know it's loose. And so this is gonna get completely re-sleeved and hot rodded. It's gonna be great. So this is ready to be shipped off. I got it completely stripped down. have a path forward now on the transaxles. I have all the parts, including bearings and synchros and dog teeth for the what I'm calling the stock transmission. And then I will collect parts for the hot rod transmission. If you know someone who has an 831 ring and pinion that's in good shape, please let me know. I need one. And also I need some of the synchro parts in first and second gear, I think it is. But I'm happy to keep this project going. As you know, the engine for Mac is running. I'll put the link to that video right there. And it's really just waiting on a few more oil lines, and then this transaxle can go in, and then Mac will be back on the road. Awesome. Thanks again for being here, guys. We'll see you next week. Cheers.